Sadly, we have not yet seen an Adamski-style craft. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I give you Robert Moore. Thank you.
Okay, right. Hello, everybody. Right, as you, that's the introductory. So, next slide, please. That's right. Today, the term UFO entity invokes the image of the atypical grey, a small fetus-like humanoid with a large head and black wraparound eyes. And in 2020, the term UFO is popularly associated with as much with mystery black triangles as it does traditional flying saucers. But decades ago, the popular conception of both was radically different. Whilst there was a wide diversity of UFO shapes, one particular form of notice dominated the British media during the 1950s and 60s. Likewise, the popular conception of a UFO entity was of a tall, blonde-haired, androgynous being. While, of course, to a large part this was a media shorthand for a then novel concept, it was also surprisingly reflected in actual UFO reports at the time. The sobering thing is these conceptions derived from a probable hoax relating to entities who claimed who abode is now known to be a living version of hell. Next slide, please. Number 3. Anyone who has even briefly studied the history of ufology recognised this stereotype as the so-called Adamski flying saucer or scout ship, and entities associated with the entities associated with it who were reputedly from Venus. George Adamski was a Polish American born in 1891 who served in the US Army just prior to World War I and had a track record of involvement in bootlegging and pseudo-religious cults. The latter, in fact, created to cover up his activities with the former. In 1952, Adamski became the first of the so-called classic-style contactees, one of many individuals, mostly American, who claimed contacts with human-like entities usually from planets within our solar system. His reported alien congress occurred in the Mojave Desert in November 1952 with a tall, blonde-haired androgynous being called Orphon and his craft, who in this and in later contacts stated they came from Venus, the second planet of our solar system. Unlike contemporary UFO abductees, this meeting was an aloof discussion involving sign language and telepathy of topics relating to their origin and concerns which seem to be focused on humanity's development of atomic weapons. Throughout his alleged involvement with flying saucer, Adamski repeatedly took numerous photographs of the UFOs he observed, often through his reflector telescope. Slide number 4, the one he just had just before.
Yeah.
Scout ship. That's important. Oh yeah, good. The most famous of his images featured the so-called Venusian scout ship, which has been used in numerous media representations of UFOs up to the present day. This now iconic form of flying saucer is presented as being around 12 meters, 40 feet in size. It is depicted as having a pillbox-like upper superstructure with a round top and portholes running along the center of the turret structure. Below this was, or maybe is, a flared skirt-like lower body with a distinctive undersection featuring an arrangement of 3 spheres orientated in a triangular configuration. This was also the craft supposedly seen in association with Orphon during Adamski's reputed first November 1952 contact. Less common were images of a supposed cigar-shaped mothership, which is used by the scout ships as a mobile base. One of Adamski's images reportedly shows such a vessel surrounded by smaller craft. Next slide, please. That's supposed to be the inside of a scout ship. Adamski's 1958 is a bit sad here. Adamski's 1952 contact claim was subsequently published in Flying Saucers Have Landed, a book co-authored with Desmond Leslie, printed by Messrs. Wenner, Laurie and Co. of London, England around September-October 1953. Prior to that, his claim was seemingly little known in the United Kingdom. Next slide, I think there's a picture of the books, isn't there? There you are. Why it featured Adamski's contact on the cover, as you can see, the account of this is actually featured in the second half of the book. The first section being an overview written by Desmond Leslie of historical UFOs. It also features supposed photographs of Adamski's scout ship and other of his UFO pictures. This work catapulted Adamski into public notice. As a consequence, he went on numerous lecture tours, including several in the United Kingdom, where he met various celebrities and devotees. The book Flying Saucers Have Landed was followed by two less popular books, Inside the Spaceships in 1955 and Flying Saucers Fall in 1961. The former, as Inside the Spaceships, notoriously features a claim that Adamski saw life forms moving on the moon's surface, an allegation that was treated with skepticism even by his supporters. Why many UFO researchers were highly skeptical of his claims, more so of his claimed later contacts, he claimed a small worldwide cabal of followers. On the publication of his first book, others, mostly in the USA and mostly from California, claimed similar contacts with entities from Venus, Mars, and other planets of our solar system. Many publishing books, giving lectures, and presenting similar pictorial imagery. The information imparted by these beings were heavy on spirituality, but light on only verifiable scientific facts. Even after Adamski's death on the 23rd of April 1965, his claims continued to intrigue sections of the UFO community, who, while skeptical of some aspects of his contact claims, believed there was some real call experience underlying it. Books were written as late as the early 1980s, defending his claim, most notably by Timothy Good and Lou Zinstag. But it is only doing a service to truth to note Adamski was at least a hustler and probably an outrageous con man. His track record includes setting up a religious organization, the Royal Order of Tibet, as a front for bootlegging, and writing a science fiction novel in the 1930s suspiciously close in content to his later claimed contacts with various interplanetary humanoids. And there's the small issue of him being a self-styled professor and inferring association with Mount Paloma, when in fact, in actuality, he actually ran a hamburger store near the observatory. Yeah. It's ironic, isn't it? It's somebody who's into New Age stuff running a hamburger store, but there you go. This number 7, please. Next slide. This presentation will not claim Adamski invented the concept of the dome disc type UFO. While the first flying saucers remained featureless discs, according to one Blue Book summary, 10 times longer than their thickness, this was not exclusively so. As early as August the 15th, 1947, there's an observation, originally from Snake River Canyon, Idaho, describing an object resembling a hat with a smoke ring emitting jets on its sides that resembles the middle portions of Adamski's scout craft, less some features but more a few others. At Curricade, Holland, on August 6th, 7th, or 8th, sources differ, 1952, a flying disc was reported described as a flat disc with a rectangular featureless cabin with a spike on top. This class of hat-shaped UFO continued to be reported to a notable example occurring in Joliet, Illinois on May the 8th, 1977, and deemed inexplicable by Alan Hendry of famous UFO study fame. Likewise, reports of tubular or cigar-shaped UFOs also predate Adamski. Among the first reported, if one ignores Sweden's wave of ghost rockets in 1946, being seen over Montgomery, Alabama on the 13th of April 1948, the famous Chills and Whitted sighting. Similar shaped forms seen in association with ancillary dome disc Saturn-shaped forms were reported several times over Gaillac and Orléans, France during October 1952. Even the suggestion that UFOs originated from Venus predate Adamski's claims. Frank Scully's 1950s work Behind the Flying Saucers, stating the reputed flying saucers, crashed flying saucers recovered from Aztec, New Mexico, came from this planet. As Venus, that is. Collectively, this suggests Adamski could have been aware of some existent concepts relating to flying saucers that he could have incorporated into his claimed UFO observations and contact narratives. While the first known claimed UFO British observation made in June 1947 was fairly unspectacular, good. Keep that one up. And likely, no, keep the cameras. That's good. It'll be on there in a minute. The Norwich one, and likely attributable to a smoke ring from a nearby railway station. Numerous reports allude to a typical flying saucer observations from 1940 up to 1953. In the main, they describe objects with few, if any, surface features. Their range of forms are comparable to those of other countries: tubular, discoid, oval, circle, and meandering lights. Nonetheless, this seemed to change to some degree after the release of Flying Saucers Have Landed during September-October 1953. If we go to the Norwich case. In Norwich, on the 6th of October 1953, a Mr. F. Potter, a business owner and long-time amateur astronomer, observed on leaving his house at 7:15 p.m. a strange yellow light in the southwestern sky. Viewing this light through a 3-inch refracting telescope seemed to resolve it as a dark grey bell-like body with a flattened dome on top. This dome possessed a series of portholes with rays of light streaming from it. The disk was viewed for around 3.5 minutes. Similar other observers also claim to claim to see the same object. While this disk has similarities with Adamski's UFOs, there are also notable differences. It's also notable for its circumstantial factors.
Yeah.
Firstly, Potter observed the main observer. He observed the disk through his telescope, as Adamski claimed to have observed and photographed many of his. Secondly, this event occurred shortly after the publication of Flying Saucers Have Landed, a fact mentioned in newspaper discussions of the event. Desmond Leslie, the co-author of Flying Saucers Have Landed, subsequently gave a lecture on Adamski's book in the town on the 20th of October. Right, you've got the Coniston one next. Number 9.
Number 9. Ow! Sorry. There was a noise there like you were being abducted by aliens. Here we go.
No, not from me, I don't think. That's it, perfect. At Coniston Lake District at around 11 a.m. on the 15th of February 1955, 2 children, Stephen Derbyshire and Adrian Mayer, who previously saw a strange silvery round object with a silvery glassy appearance. It was further described as a solid metal-like thing with a dome with portholes and 3 humps or landing domes underneath. It was reportedly seen at a low elevation, then it moved behind a feature and then came back into view a few seconds later. And then it's tipped on its side and then shot in the air with a deep swooshing sound. Derbyshire claimed to have taken several images of this disc, which, while they came out blurred, had sufficient detail to make out its basic shape. On close examination of these pictures, an engineer called Leonard Cramp concluded Derbyshire.
Robert, we're going to have to pause a moment. I'm just trying to find the control.
Bunny, Maisie, come here. Bunny, Maisie, come on, Maisie, come here. Right, stay there, guys. Stay there, guys.
Ready? I'll carry on. No, carry on. I've finished yet.
Right, yeah, okay, there we go.
That's the next one, though, of course.
Yeah, I can't.
Oh, sorry, that's it. Okay, fine.
I was
right. Okay, start again.
Carry on, Rob.
Ready then?
Yeah, carry on, Robert. Sorry.
Yeah. Yes. On close examination of these pictures, an engineer called Leonard Cramp concluded Derbyshire's UFO had the same configuration as Adamski's scout ship. The witness also, as you can see, the famous orthographic projection he did of it, which proves they supposed to be the same object. The witness also came into contact with Desmond Leslie, the co-author of Flying Saucers Landed, and also Adamski on one of his later visits to the UK. Today, these pictures are now mostly forgotten or remembered as hoaxes. Like other reputed British UFO images of this era, again mostly taken by children, their originators eventually stated they were hoaxes, but later retracted their confessions, often leaving them in conceptual limbo. It is both ironic and telling that the spring 1954 issue of Flying Saucer News had this to say of the Derbyshire pictures. Let's not avoid the all-important issue any longer. If Stephen Derbyshire is telling the truth, so is Adamski. There is no two ways about it. This effectively summarised the conundrum British ufology was faced with. So many UFO sightings, accounts, and images depicted flying saucers with Adamski scout ship-like features that they seemingly, albeit indirectly, vindicated the Californian contactee's wild claims. Ranton, now the next one. At Ranton Staff, on the 21st of October 1954, a homemaker called Jessie Rostenberg became aware of a sound like water being poured on a fire. And looking up at the sky, she observed that some rarer-shaped object with two entities looking out of a transparent section. I believe that's a sketch by her herself. These entities shared close comparisons of Adamski's Venusians being human-like with long blonde hair and high foreheads. The craft reportedly circled the sighting area and then departed. Next one, please. Bexley Heath, I think. At Bexley Heath, Greater London, between 12:30 and 1 p.m. On the 17th of July 1955, there are numerous observations of a circa 25-foot diameter bell-shaped UFO, described as having greyish or beaten silver surface and an underside with suckers or free spheres or lights underneath.
Rob, one moment. I'm just trying to mute. Could I ask people if they can just mute their microphones by going to the bottom of the screen and clicking the mute button? Thank you. Sorry. I'm not able to mute everyone because then Robert can't, you won't be able to hear Robert. Thank you. Okay, carry on, Robert. Sorry.
Okay, so sorry, madam, ready now? Okay,
yep.
I'll do that bit again because it got interrupted. Right, at Bexley Heath, Greater London, between 12:30 and 1 p.m. on the 17th of July 1955, there were numerous observations of a circa 25-foot diameter bell-shaped UFO, described as having a greyish or beaten silver surface and undersurface with either suckers, spheres, or lights underneath. It was stationary for a few minutes before picking up back.
No, get back. Back. You get
there
back.
There were several accounts that differ somewhat on various salient accounts. At Betley, Crewe, at 7:30 on the 15th of August 1955, the picture you've got there now, a postmaster claimed to be a domed disc source, a domed saucer hovering in the sky. It appeared to be made of glass or reflective metal-like material and seemed to be orientated on its side. The disc remained stationary for a while, turning its underside towards the observer while moving away. The illustration of this manifestation was reproduced in Flying Saucer News, shows a distinctly Adamski scout ship-like form, including 3 prominent spheres on its underside. Next slide, please. Ryde, Isle of Wight. That's it, good. At Ryde, Isle of Wight, on the July 1st, 1961, at around 12:15 a.m., 2 women saw what they first believed to be a illuminated hovercraft approaching them at low level from a sea-facing window at their house. It glowed with an orange light with an orange-case light streaming out of what the observers took to be portholes. The form then shot upwards at rapid speed, leaving a luminous ring that persisted for a few minutes. Leonard Cramp, remember that name, interviewed the witnesses and acquired drawings from one of the witnesses, which depicts an Adamski-style scout ship, minus the 3 lander spheres on its underside. In Aston, Birmingham, on the 18th of November 1957 up to January 1958, an entity with long blonde hair and a bright one-piece outfit repeatedly appeared in the front room of Cynthia Appleton. This being claimed to be from Genghis-Khan, the continent on the planet Venus. During one contact, the being showed Appleton an image of a domed disc with 3 half spheres on its underside. One of their claimed reasons for the presence of Earth was to look for a substance called titium, which some people have interpreted as being titanium. Their supposed dialogue supposedly featured scientific matters beyond the understanding of Cynthia Appleton. The entity predicted the witness would give birth to a baby boy, which subsequently occurred some 9 months later. The Appletons subsequently vanished from the public view thereafter, and nothing more is seemingly known of them. On the 24th of April 1965 at Scorriton, Devon, An individual called Arthur Bryant claimed he boarded a landed UFO. In the crash, he met two entities along with a more human-like and youthful-looking individual who said his name was Adamski. During the conversation with Bryant, Adamski said he wished Des Les was here as he would understand. At the end of his encounter, Adamski promised Bryant proof of mantle. A UFO was later repeatedly seen. The site and locus later found to be littered with various metal fragments, including portions of a British electromagnetic computer. Bryant subsequently died from a brain tumour in June 1967. Adamski was interpreted by some as a reincarnation of George Adamski, given the supposed land occurred the day after Adamski's death. However, the contact claim was widely rejected even by Adamski's supporter, most notably Des Les, or Desmond Leslie himself. This event also marked the decline of Adamski's influence over British ufology. Following his death, new trends such as UFO abductions began to dominate the subject, both here in the US. The results of space probes sent to Venus and Mars during the same epoch also dispelled the notion that they could be the abode of intelligent life. Alleged encounters of UFO entities, historically more diverse than today, rarely featured blonde-haired entities after that date, and none claimed to be from Venus. In fact, if any origin was cited, it was from planets well beyond our solar system. While once termed Earth's twin, and with early 20th century speculation envisioned it as possessing tropical jungles and saurian life forms, the truth about Venus is alas much less romantic. Space probes launched from the 1960s onwards determined Venus to have an atmospheric pressure of some 90 to 91 times greater than Earth, a mean temperature of 464 degrees C, hot enough to melt lead, an atmosphere of carbon dioxide with clouds of sulfuric acid. Hardly then a suitable abode for androgynous angelic beings in their flying discs. So could they have had an earthly origin in the form of some kind of novel form of aviation technology? Next slide, please. In recent decades, there has been renewed interest in the idea that Nazi scientists may have created functional flying discs during World War II, most notably by writers as Nick Cook, but also several authors of earlier books who actually pioneered this idea. It is worth noting that several claimed Nazi UFO designs have similarities to Adamski's craft. So, could these have been found and been reused by the Allies after the war? After all, the most concordant reports come from this time of Adamski-type UFOs. There are many rumours relating to Nazi flying discs, but few facts. The various claims have either been dispelled as fabrications or exist oddly in isolation from other acknowledged cutting-edge technology, such as von Braun's Vengeance rockets, various flying wings by the Horton brothers, and other similar efforts. Of these, two of them are special note here. That the Glock, or the Bell, was a supposed Nazi electromagnetically based craft based in Poland, tested late in World War II. Original documentation of this craft was reportedly found in a filing cabinet in the mid-1990s, but it's otherwise unknown to aviation historians who deem the whole claim a fabrication. As its name infers, it had a reputed bell-shaped craft comparable, but not identical to Adamski's saucer. And there's the famous Hannibal, which first appeared in the book Close Encounters of the Foo Fighter Kind by Vladimir Teletsky, first published in 1993. It claims these craft were built by pre-Nazi Germany under the guidance of aliens and were used to travel to the Moon and Mars before and just after World War II. This claim was later expanded around 2000 in a website called Nordic Saucer Review, which also gave a timeline of Hannibal's supposed development. The Hannibal supposedly resembled Adamski's scout craft, albeit equipped with gun turrets and without distinctive three spheres on the underside. While it is tempting to suggest that the various UFO sightings above were seen at Hannibal, there is not an iota of proof for its reality. There is no documentary of any historical provenance that supports its actual existence. The craft is only in the pages of the UFO books and websites that promote its existence. The fact they incorporate the The fact that the genesis of homebrew is associated with language-correlated alternative history fails to inspire confidence, yet it has not stopped various manufacturers from model kits of this supposed device as if existence was an unproven fact. There is, of course, a more prosaic explanation. Does the origins of Adamski scout ship not lie with the Third Reich, but with mass-produced consumer goods in America prior to and after World War II? Next slide, please. In the early 2000s, researchers, it's quite good that, isn't it? In the early 2000s, the researcher, the late Joel Carpenter, noticed similarities to the upper section of the Venus saucer with the tops of American gasoline lanterns produced by Sears and Roebuck and similar pre-war vendors. As the slide shows, various models here, all phone approved too, but so various models by several manufacturers were produced during the 1930s and 40s with a similar shape or way of vent holes similar to that shown in Adamski's photographs. Even more damning, Carpenter noted slots on the Venus scoutcraft in the same place where a handle would slot into the tops of the gas lantern. It even has a similar surface sheen to those products, along with a distinctive pattern of bridges just a little below the lantern's upper section, again matching those of the scout ship. See, that's on the next slide. That's quite damning. There we are. As you can see, the slots just where the handle would have gone in. Other components of Adamski's UFO match other lantern parts, strongly indicating it is a composite model made from one or more of these quite prosaic objects. Adamski would likely have easily accessed these items, given they were all of American manufacture in circulation decades before his photographs were published. So, but what then of the claimed British scout ship reports? We can be charitable and assume some witnesses were prompted to perceive specific features in the UFOs they had observed due to them prevailing cultural imagery. For example, the Norwich UFO had features similar but identical to Adamski's scout ship, but was placed in that category as the book was released approximately when the sighting occurred. But this does not explain the elements that matched Adamski's experiences, such as Potter seeing his UFO mostly through his telescope, as Adamski repeatedly did with some of his. Such factors and the early data reports suggest that claims the limitless store of UFO experience strokes to contextualize the experience. In other words, Potter saw the flying bell through his telescope because Adamski had, and that's how UFOs were thought to be experienced at that time. This suggests that such case references by a Richard Dawkins Blackmore-style meme, ideas to enable conception and perception. Of course, Potter may have mistaken a prosaic object distorted by his telescope and/or atmospherics. Henry reported a similar incident in his studies of late 1970s American UFO reports. In regards to the Betley, Heath, Coniston and Ryde observations, we also have the possibility that observers were led into ascribing specific Adamski-style features to their discs by UFO enthusiasts. Hopefully, that ancillary experiences would vindicate Adamski. For instance, Leonard Cramp in regards to the Ryde and Coniston events. One suspects this could have also been a factor in the 1955 event as well. One has to wonder how much the UFO actually resembled Adamski's scout ship. Indeed, Cramp states in one of his books, UFOs and Anti-Gravity, whether George Adamski's skeptics like it or not, the logical development of a gravitationally powered spacecraft, purely from engineering considerations, would almost certainly take the form of the well-known scout ship. And he also devotes a whole chapter entitled Vindication of a Scout Ship defending its viability. This in itself may have been in response to criticisms from skeptics regarding the wide range of UFO forms, which, to their minds, inferred they were imaginary. NICAP's UFO evidence, originally produced in 1962 and later printed again in 1997, for example, stresses several times that oval, sphere and cigar-shaped UFOs could actually be disc-shaped forms merely seen from different angles. Researchers were hoping to find shared attributes in sighting accounts that would vindicate their objective reality. But it is unfortunate then that so many held such great store in Adamski's claims. However, be less charitable in regards to comparable images and photographs. It seems likely the reason that the Coniston pictures so closely resemble Adamski's is they were indeed the same type of object. Did Arbiter have access to the same gas lantern Adamski seemingly possessed? We are then left with a series of entity experiences, Ranton, Aston and Skoroton. These are more easy to account for. They may have been hallucinatory experiences whose context again was dictated by images of Orphon as promoted by Adamski. It is significant that two of these events are single witness incidents, i.e. Skoroton and Aston. The other, Ranton, was mostly observed by one witness, with two other potential witnesses, her children carrying under a table when this occurred. The brain tumour that resulted in Bryant's demise, one involved in the Skoroton mystery, may also be significant in this instance. Why Ranton involved a UFO totally unlike Adamski's scout ship, that's the Fostenberg event, the one of the Aston events describe it. Anyway.
You still there, Robert?
Yeah. Just a minute. Why Ranton involved a total UFO totally unlike Adamski's scout ship, one of the Aston events describe Adamski's scout ships, which we can demonstrate with pictures of gas lanterns misleadingly represented as flying saucers. It can be argued that relic features acquired from Adamski's narrative, like vestigial images and living organisms, still persist even in contemporary UFO descriptions. I think that's number 17. White claimed observations of UFOs resembling Adamski's scout ship began to decline from the early 1960s onwards. It is notable that UFOs resembling streamlined versions of this reputed form did still occur. Notable examples of such events include Winslow 1967 and Dursley 1969 and Dursley 1969. These featured dome disc UFOs with a rounded base, but minus the elaborate underside spheres and undersection of Adamski's craft. In fact, resembling streamlined versions of the Adamski scout ship. Sightings of modern mystery triangles describe their underside as possessing a configuration of three lights, often surrounded by a central feature comparable to that possessed by the underside of Adamski's scout ship. This, of course, may be coincidental and even attributable to Adamski modelling his fake sources on real American reports of his era. This is an area, to be honest, that requires further research. Right, to conclude, sadly, I cannot give you proof of mantle or scout ships Gandasvan in this presentation, only proof of Sears and Roebuck. Sadly, there is no actual Adamski scout ship, as it was clearly a model created from a gas lantern. This is not to say UFOs did not exist outside of Adamski's imagination. Basic archetypes for dome disc and cigar UFOs predate his claims. He did not create the flying saucer, dome disc, hat ship UFO, or the flying cigar. But a distinctive form of UFO began to be reported in the UK once Adamski experiences became well known in this country. Some likely saw Adamski-like features on the UFO due to cultural expectation, others because they were encouraged to do so by motivated UFO enthusiasts. These accounts were prevalent from circa late 1953 to 1961. This was a year when Adamski's long shadow, cast all the way from California, influenced UFO reports in a small part of old Europe. Last slide, please. Adamski's ghost still haunts us still. His scout ship is still represented. Okay, now that one. Scout ship is still represented in graphic representations of UFOs, most notably Osborne's now iconic children's book All About UFOs, published in 1978. Model kits either directly based on his iconic saucer, next slide please, or the supposed Nazi Hannibal that it probably inspired, are still available today, in the latter case causing notable controversy. His surname has also become a byword for the otherworldly. British musician Adam Tinley adopted Adamski as a stage name in the early 1980s, ironically becoming the person most people now think of when hearing this name. The old huckster and his magic lantern still works his sorcery over Britannia. That's the end of the presentation.
Thank you very, very much, Robert. That was superb, and thank you for putting up with a rather unusual situation there.
No. Sorry, I kind of blanked a bit towards the end. Sorry about that.
Right, so just as an apology to everybody, what happened there was when me and Robert were trying to set up earlier, Robert was co-host, but he wasn't able to we weren't able to hear him. So he left and came in again, as you all came in. And as a result of that, unfortunately, I wasn't able to mute the microphones, which is why we had the unfortunate incident halfway through with the werewolves.
Oh, I thought it was me. I was looking out the window when you saying that.
It wasn't at this end, but yeah, it just happened. So I'll edit that out before we actually. Now, at this point, it's very, very warm, but I'm sure that some people have got questions. So, who would like to ask Robert a question? I'll tell you what, I'll start. Robert, years and years and years ago, when I was a boy, there was a TV show called Mork and Mindy.
Yes.
Featured Robin
Not
Williams
that old. Not really that old.
as Mork, and I believe that wasn't Orphan a character in that? Wasn't that the name of his boss that he used to report to?
It could have been. It sounded like it. Or more calling Orson. I think it's Orson, wasn't it?
It was Orson, yeah.
Next Saturday, remember that, isn't it?
Yeah, and Orphan was what made me think of it. So, yeah, it's strange, isn't it? I mean, the names. It can't be a coincidence, surely.
No, it's not. A lot of things.
Mork was a gentle space UFO inhabitant from the planet Orc, who'd ended up trapped
not
on
Orc or AO. I think AOC or something, not ORC.
Yeah, and it ended up trapped on the Earth. So I've stopped sharing the screen, haven't I? Right, chat. Hello, what was that? Right, here we go. Right, Robert. Okay, next question, please. Where's chat? It was awesome. David, anyone got any questions? Yeah. Mr.
Hello.
Sylvia. Hello. Go, Paula.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for a really interesting talk. I was wondering if there was any link between the stories about Nazis in flying saucers going off to the moon and the fact that the aliens that Adamski saw in the 50s were these sort of tall, blonde, Aryan types.
I think so, that's right. Unfortunately, when I was doing my research, I couldn't quite tie some in. There was, as some people might know, I was doing some research and found there were some links between Adamski advocates and Nazism, or Nazi supporting. George Hunt Williamson, one of Adamski's circles, was supposed to have had Nazi-like points of view, and also Raveney Gervan, which I will not mention in this talk at the moment. It's just too complicated. Sort of
don't get political.
Rumors of him being involved in a kind of like trying to be Nazi appeasement and right-wing politics. So there was some link, but Adamski himself, he seems to be politically seems to be a benign person, other than the fact that he's a huckster. And of course, I also think that the angelic being type thing may be more of a holdover from religion, and also theosophy, which is something else I tried to incorporate in this talk, but I could not find out on earth what theosophists actually believe about Venus and when these beliefs became prevalent. Because it's always saying, Adamski still says the blonde-haired men's from Venus and one of the races of Blavatsky, but you'd have to be sure that it was existent at the time before Adamski, so Adamski could have read it. Adamski certainly probably studied occult literature, being involved in all kinds of weird occult things, so he would have probably been aware of stuff like that. So I think that partially it may be theosophy links, it may be religious links. I think that effectively you expect the angels to be tall and blonde-haired, and some people even suggested Adamski's UFOs are like a CQ's Phil, because wills have been wills, so to speak. But it's an open question. Adamski, I don't think himself was a Nazi, but if a couple of people who were associated with him had sympathies in that direction, but not Adamski himself. He was a huckster. I think he liked the greenback dollar more than anything, I think, to be honest.
Right.
I like being famous and going around the world, which he never would have done.
Quick, just before we go on to the next question, which is from Lee Colville, I'd just like to tell you that next week, we're delighted on 2nd of July at 7 p.m, we will have Dr. Peter McHugh, Communication with the Dead, Fact or Comforting Delusion. And that will be a really interesting talk, I'm sure. So, Dr.
I don't have to do it either.
He'll be doing next week. So, good. Robert, next question. Lee Colville, can you ask a question? I can't hear Lee. I think he's
Hello.
Hello, Lee.
Yeah, hello. Good evening, everyone. Hello, Robert. Thank you for the talk. Hello there.
What do you think of the claims that were suggested that Adamski was actually working for the, should we say, the military-industrial complex at the time? That's almost as a debunking exercise.
Right. So they could make that's the thing to make UFO claims look ridiculous.
Yeah, laughable. Yeah,
kind of like I think it was like the Robinson panel trying to strip the aura of respectability that they have and make them look ridiculous. I think Disney was actually supposed to have been commissioned to draw cartoons that make the same thing.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's interesting.
There's been no direct evidence.
No. I know it's a big thing in the conspiracy theory world, but I've never seen direct evidence.
Adamski is that he once claimed NICAP membership. He went absolutely spared that he was actually a member of NICAP because he didn't need to contact these. That's about the only thing I've heard. And of course, we all know his involvement with bootlegging.
Yeah, of course, yeah. I mean, I thought one of the ideas of using him because he was a bit of obviously a narcissistic character by the looks of it. He'd be a good person to use. You know.
I'm not saying it exists. It doesn't exist. I didn't find it going through the study, but I did. But I've heard it, and it's interesting. I often keep an eye on it. Kind of
also, with because there's links with Bob Lazar as well. He was talking about with the reverse engineering against the conspiracy theory world. He was talking about reverse engineering. He did mention some of the, Adamski's poor designs were actually based upon, reverse engineered stuff that had been captured after Roswell.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. With the belt, the three spheres underneath the
chili. Of course, you've got to remember something. Like I said in the talk, it may have been Adamski got some of the aspects of his claims from Scully and the Aztec crash, which could have caused stuff from Roswell, or maybe some people say Aztec actually happened, and there's a whole part of the UFO community that says Aztec was a real crash retrieval for decades, but it was often believed it was just a load of rubbish. But some people think it may have happened. Yeah, Roswell is. I think it first started. Now it's looking more like a delta V-shaped ring type thing now.
As opposed to the crystal saucer shape.
I Kenneth Arnold drew some of his UFOs.
Okay, guys.
Thank you, Robert.
Try to mute the microphones for those who are not talking. It's very difficult to do that.
I like it. It keeps me on my toes and makes me just function under pressure. But there we go.
Next up, Greg Hardman. Greg, could you? Oops, sorry. Greg.
Yep.
Ask away.
Well, go on then. All these conspiracy theorists, UFO enthusiasts, they claim that UFOs fly billions of miles through space to get to our planet.
Yes.
It's amazing how many of them crash.
Yes. Well, one time they never crashed at all, but then suddenly after the 1980s UFOs became popular and they crashed everywhere. But the claims were admittedly backdated from the 1940s, of course. I think Valet says in one of his books that why don't UFOs ever crash? It was ironic compared to what we think now, isn't there? Or what is commonly believed in ufology today. Every country has its Roswell almost. I've heard a Mexican Roswell, a Brazilian Roswell, a Welsh Roswell, a British Roswell.
We've got 2 in Wales.
Yeah, 2 in Wales. Well, you think of a country and there would be a Roswell of it.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a kind of a strange thing because crash flying saucers something that claimed to be crash flying saucers were early part of the UFO story, but somehow they got shunted aside and got ignored after Roswell was publicly, however you want to believe, was actually believed to be shown to be a balloon, or at least to the satisfaction of people at the time. But after
Operation Mogul,
it's more and Stanton Friedman's works, people began to doubt that explanation, and also the subsidiary testimonies that were found, like involving bodies and weird wreckage and everything. They kind of like crash flying saucers were a thing that came back from the dead. Of course, you've got to remember too, Scully's claim was another factor which made crash flying saucers very unpopular for a while because it turned out to be a hoax by three con men, and is trying to sell this kind of device that could sell oil. And he said, "Oh, by the way, I heard a story about this crash flying saucer," and the rest, of course, is ufological history.
Well, it's the same with Roswell itself, isn't it? I mean, that wasn't talked about after that year, 1947. It wasn't talked about for another 30
Yeah, it's
years.
gone until about Berlitz's book in the late 70s, early 80s, and then there was a whole explosion of stuff in the 80s, the 90s onwards until like we were talking on the internet a few days ago about how people think UFO started with Roswell. It started with Kenneth Arnold, but it also didn't even start with Kenneth Arnold because there were aerial sightings even then. So where does it really truly begin?
Okay, next question. I'm going to have to pass on, sorry, to David Rolfe. David, are you there?
Of course, if anybody wants to ask questions afterwards, please do so on the ASSAP website, on the ASSAP Facebook page.
No, I'm not getting through to David Rolfe.
Hello, I'm here. Can you hear me? Hello.
Yep, David.
Just very quickly, thank you, Robert, for, I think that was a brilliant lecture, actually, and I thought the pictures of the Adamski gas lantern were brilliant. Yeah. And sort of my follow-up...
Rolf Carpenter was looking at me from heaven saying, yes.
Well, my questions are kind of, I have a couple, if I may, and the first one, I think, is, firstly, what motivated Adamski, in your opinion? Secondly, how do you feel that Adamski...
I'll answer the question one at a time, because I can focus on them better. Right, what motivated Adamski? I think Adamski, I think I said, was fairly into New Age stuff and mysticism. Sometimes as a cover for his nubilis activities, bootlegging, and other times that he... some of the possibly perhaps a little bit authentic, and it's some of the things he may have believed in. I think it's mysticism. I think it's also maybe the thing to be famous, isn't it? Because remember, he went all around the world. He met lots of famous people. He previously met the Pope. He met Queen Juliana of the Netherlands. He met all these famous authors. Sort of saying, I think there's also a claim that he said to somebody once, just before all this happened, before all these events happened, before claimed events happened, how do I get into this flying saucer racket? He may have just seen it as a apparently I forgot to mention that in the talk, but I'm not sure how true that claim is. But I don't know, maybe a form of mysticism, maybe he did have mystical ideas, maybe he saw it as a path to fame and fortune. Because he was carried on lecturing, and apparently in some lectures he was progressively getting unwell. People were noticing he was slow during responses, and he was sweating a lot during talks and everything. So his health did deteriorate. But I would say possibly various motives: to be famous, to be the man who met aliens, also is a good thing, isn't it? To go around the world being famous and being this person everybody wants, to publish his book. Because he did publish a few books, but he never really achieved the circulation that Flying Saucers of Landed ever did. So Flying Saucers of Landed made him famous in a way, and made him a worldwide name that we still remember today. Okay, your other questions then.
So thanks, Robert. No, that's given me a bit of an insight into it. The second question is really how much you feel Adamski has kind of influenced the modern UFO contactee movement.
That's a good question. I would say by the actual meme of the man who has a hunch, who goes out into the wilderness and he speaks to people who they come from planets and they have a message of spiritual enlightenment and warning and fears of nuclear weapons and fears of atomic war and all kinds of things like that. And it's interesting. The age of the physical 1950 style contactee is over, but you will notice in various parts of the world there are lots of mental style contactees. I'll just explain what I mean by mental. I mean very similar to mediumship and channeling. I think Louis Furrow featured one. The kind of like this statico voice saying he was from this place, and there was George King after George King in historically United Kingdom as well. It has moved more towards contactee style things have moved towards more towards more like spiritualism. And also another thing is that as we see that the narrative has moved on. Now UFOs, people rather than having a hunch, people driving in a country lane or something, they see something, they use missing time, they get regressed and they have the experience of being examined by strange aliens. And the aliens are very distinctive. Well, like these aliens from 1950s were distinctive, the grey as opposed to the Nordic. And of course, you've got to remember the Nordic is still reporting some abduction experiences today. And they're often given a supervisory role over the smaller grey type entities. The various few, I think Travis Walton's experience may have had a reference to one, and I think there's a few other cases where they've been seen, and now they're not called the Venusians, but they're called tall whites, but they're still there. They kind of like change their context and their language. So basically, I think he created a stereotype of the contactee, of the physical contactee, which I think was superseded later by abductees, and superseded by channeling style contacts, which I think is the main thing that happens today and still happens today.
Thanks, Robert. I'll leave my questions there because I don't want to hog the mic. Thank you.
If you want one, I'm happy to give it another go. We've got plenty of time.
One other question then very quickly is, and this is perhaps one for yourself, Robert, and maybe Chris as well. It'd be interesting to hear your thoughts on this.
Yes.
So in terms of the Adamski case, could one use that as an example of, would it be the first example perhaps of a UFO story or encounter to be debunked through rational evidence, and how much can we take from that as we sort of move into the future?
Good question. Well, it depends how much what you call debunked. I'll answer first, Christian will answer afterwards. There were critical assessments of Adamski going all the way back to the 1950s, 60s, and 70s when he was live, and sort of has progressed since then. The two most significant developments today have been the Mark Hallett's book, which I recommend you go about Adamski, which goes into very great detail on debunking every little bit under the sun, and of course the late Joel Carpenter's observation about the gas lanterns. So yes, I suppose it is, but of course it poses us some problems as well, as I said, as like how about some of the UFO sightings have Adamski-like features. How much of British ufology will we lose? How much British ufology will we have to amend? Okay, I'll pass it on to Christian then.
Okay, well, I feel like a complete fraud now because I know nothing at all about UFOs. But what I do know is that either 2 days before or 2 or 3 days after Kenneth Arnold's first experience, when he's flying over Washington State, and he sees, is it 9 or 12? I can't remember the number, but he sees a number of objects that he describes as skipping like saucers over water, and then he does describe them as saucer shaped, despite the fact many people say he doesn't ever use that term. He describes them in many ways at different times. But around about the same time, there was a claimed experience over at Maury Island, which I think is down near Seattle somewhere.
Yes.
And the US, and because he was talking to US Air Force intelligence, I think the US Air Force actually comes into creation that week. He flies out there and carries out some investigations, and there's some claimed physical evidence. And 2 intelligence officers fly out, and tragically on the way back, their plane crashes, and they become the first victims, the first members of the new US Air Force to die when the US Army Air Force is replaced by the US Air Force. But that, I think, was fairly comprehensively written off and debunked as a hoax. What I would say is always you need to be careful when you're doing something like Adamski and talking in terms of hoax, because throughout history, prophets and visionaries have gone into the wilderness and have come back with unlikely stories and new revelations and scriptures and visions of something beyond. And one wonders if Adamski had some kind of revelatory experience that was personal, perhaps hallucinatory, or perhaps spiritual. But then later, when he was trying desperately to prove it to other people, he then resorted to, or somebody else resorted to, crude fakes. But I've never read any books on him, so I don't know. But I would say it seems entirely possible to me that he was at least partly sincere. He believed his own hype.
But of course, you've got to take into account his background as being a huckster in some ways.
Yeah, okay. Well, if his background's being a huckster, the question is, can hucksters have authentic spiritual experience?
I suppose so, yes. I suppose that is a good question.
Yeah, so I mean, I won't throw out the baby with the bathwater. I'm personally not going to condemn Adamski because he's caused me a lot of pleasure with his flying.
That's why I put him in the talk, because you mentioned him.
Okay, I think last question, because we're now running out of time. David Sivia, would you like to say something?
Hello, David.
Oh, he might have dropped off because his computer's a bit unstable. So.
They have been a bit today, I'm afraid, haven't they?
Yeah, I think it might be
my laptop was. I'm afraid I had to swap
right.
it. But as you can see, my desktop is older, but it seems to be a bit more stable, which is better, I suppose. Shame that no one will miss seeing my face, I'm sure.
Oh, it was lovely to see your face, but unfortunately we couldn't hear you at the same time, and that's why we ended up with this.
Well, probably you saved.
My apologies.
You saved a horrific experience. Never mind. I watched my hair special too.
I've now worked out how to mute mics anyway when someone's. Oh, here comes David back. Okay, right. So, Mr. Sivia, are you back yet? David, are you back? Oh, we've run out of time now.
He also put some notes in the Zoom chat box, Chris. I don't know whether you've seen those.
Oh, no, I can't look at them at the same time as I'm hosting, because although we had co-hosts...
Oh, sorry, there's a whole load. I'm sorry I didn't look. Oh, I'm glad some people liked it.
Hi, Greg.
Oh, Robert Moore must be shot at dawn.
Thank you, Robert, for the talk.
Yeah, thanks everybody, and thank you very much. And what I'm going to suggest is that if you type into Facebook ASSAP UFO, there is an ASSAP UFO group, and we'll head over to that there and carry on with the conversation there.
I'll be there. I'm not going nowhere.
All right. Well, thank you very much to everyone for coming on tonight, and thank you for all of your input tonight. And apologies for the problem we had. Once again, as I say,
we got around it though, didn't we?
We did. You're still co-hosting.
That's one of the reasons why I sent you the slides, because I was a bit concerned that my laptop camera wouldn't work, so I gave you the slides in case.
Well, thank you very much indeed.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Goodbye,
guys.
Next week.
Thanks, Robert.
Bye. Next week, Dr.
Thank
you.
Cheers, everyone. Bye.
Cheers, everyone. Good night.
Goodbye, everybody. Bye.
Thanks, Robert.
Bye.